What if discipline was never the problem? Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that every habit you've ever failed wasn't your fault. Not because you're lazy. Not because you're weak. Not because you don't want success badly enough. What if the real problem is that you've been fighting your brain instead of working with it? For years, we've been told the same story. If you want to lose weight, be more disciplined. If you want to wake up early, have more willpower. If you want to stop procrastinating, just try harder. It sounds reasonable. But if trying harder actually worked, wouldn't it have worked by now? Think about it. How many Mondays have started with incredible motivation, only to fade by Wednesday? How many journals have you bought, workout plans have you downloaded, books have you promised yourself you'd finish, or goals have you set with genuine excitement, only to watch them quietly slip away? You're not alone. Almost everyone has stood at that same starting line, full of hope, only to wonder later, what's wrong with me? The answer may surprise you. There probably isn't anything wrong with you. Your brain isn't designed to make life harder. In fact, it's designed to do the exact opposite. Every single day, it's looking for ways to save energy, simplify decisions, and turn repeated actions into automatic behaviors. That's one of the reasons you can brush your teeth without thinking, drive a familiar route almost on autopilot, or instinctively reach for your phone the moment you hear a notification. Your brain loves shortcuts. The problem is that it doesn't always care whether those shortcuts help you or hurt you. It simply strengthens whatever you repeat most often. That's why bad habits can become so deeply rooted, while good habits often feel like an uphill climb. It's not a character flaw. It's science. Throughout this audiobook, we're going to explore that science together. Not in a complicated textbook kind of way, but in a way that actually makes sense and fits into everyday life. You'll discover how habits are really formed inside the brain, why motivation always fades no matter how determined you feel today, and why successful people don't rely on willpower nearly as much as most people think they do. More importantly, you'll learn practical strategies that make positive habits easier to start, easier to repeat, and much harder to break. You don't need to become a different person overnight. You don't need superhuman discipline or endless motivation. What you need is a better understanding of how your mind works, and a system that works with it instead of against it. By the end of this audiobook, you'll see your daily routines through an entirely different lens. The habits that once felt impossible to build will begin to look achievable, and the cycles that kept pulling you backward will finally start to make sense. Real change rarely begins with a giant leap. More often, it starts with one small insight that changes how you see yourself and the choices you make every day. And that insight begins here. Because before you can build an unbreakable habit, you first have to understand why your old ones kept breaking. Chapter 1. Your brain is always building habits. Have you ever driven home from work and suddenly realized you don't remember half the journey? You stopped at traffic lights. You turned at the right streets. You avoided other cars. Somehow, you arrived safely, even though your mind was busy thinking about tomorrow's meeting, your grocery list, or a conversation you had earlier in the day. It's almost as if your body took over while your brain went somewhere else. The strange thing is, that's exactly what happened. Your brain wasn't asleep. It was doing what it was designed to do, running a habit. When you first learned to drive, nothing felt automatic. Every movement demanded your full attention. You gripped the steering wheel tightly. You checked the mirrors again and again. You thought carefully about the pedals, the gears, the traffic signs, and every car around you. By the time you reached your destination, you probably felt mentally exhausted. Now think about how different it feels today. The road hasn't changed. The car hasn't changed. The biggest change happened inside your brain. What once required enormous effort eventually became almost effortless. That's the incredible power of repetition. Your brain is constantly looking for ways to save energy. Every decision you make costs mental effort, and your brain wants to conserve as much of that effort as possible. Imagine if you had to consciously think about every single action you performed each day. How to tie your shoes, brush your teeth, unlock your phone, pour a cup of coffee, or even walk across a room. You'd be mentally drained before breakfast. So your brain developed a brilliant solution. Whenever you repeat an action often enough, it begins turning that action into a habit. Think of it like walking through a grassy field. The first time you cross it, you have to push through tall grass. Every step takes effort. Walk the same path every day, though, and something changes. The grass bends. A narrow trail begins to appear. Keep using it long enough, and eventually there's a clear path that's easy to follow. Your brain works much the same way. Every repeated action strengthens a mental pathway. The more often you repeat it, the smoother and faster that pathway becomes. Eventually, your brain stops asking whether you should do the behavior. It simply assumes that's what happens next. That's why habits feel automatic. Scientists have found that a small but powerful part of the brain called the basal ganglia plays a major role in this process. You don't need to remember that name. What's important is understanding what it does. Think of it as your brain's automation center. Its job is to store routines that you've practiced over and over again so your conscious mind doesn't have to keep making the same decisions. It's incredibly efficient. And efficiency is wonderful, until it isn't. Because your brain doesn't judge your habits. It doesn't label them as good or bad. It only asks one question. Have we done this enough times to make it automatic? If the answer is yes, it starts building that shortcut. That's why reaching for your phone every time you're bored can become second nature. Why grabbing a snack when you're stressed starts to feel normal. Why checking social media for just a minute somehow turns into half an hour. The brain isn't trying to sabotage you. It's simply repeating what it's been taught. The good news? The very same system that created unwanted habits can create life-changing ones. Every time you read instead of scrolling, every time you choose a walk instead of the couch, every time you sit down to write, practice, study, or exercise, you're teaching your brain a new pattern. At first, it feels awkward. It might even feel uncomfortable. That's perfectly normal. Remember learning to drive? You didn't become confident after one lesson. You became confident because you repeated the process until your brain no longer needed to think about every detail. Building healthy habits works exactly the same way. The mistake most people make is expecting repetition to feel exciting. But repetition isn't supposed to feel exciting. It's supposed to feel familiar. And familiarity is where habits are born. This is why the first few days of any new routine often feel like climbing a steep hill. Your brain is creating a brand new path through that tall grass. Every step requires effort because the trail doesn't exist yet. Then something remarkable begins to happen. Each repetition makes the next one just a little easier. The path becomes clearer. The resistance becomes smaller. One day, without even realizing it, you begin doing what once felt impossible almost automatically. That's not magic. That's your brain adapting. Unfortunately, many people quit before they ever reach that point. They mistake difficulty for failure. They believe that if something feels hard, it must not be working. In reality, the difficulty is often proof that the process has already begun. Your brain is busy building a new pathway. It simply needs more repetitions. Here's something worth remembering. Every habit you have today, whether it serves you or holds you back, started as a single action repeated enough times. No one wakes up with a lifelong habit overnight. It grows quietly, one choice at a time. That's incredibly encouraging because it means your future isn't controlled by who you are today. It's shaped by what you repeatedly do starting now. The habits that define your life tomorrow are being built by the choices you make today, often the small ones that seem too insignificant to matter. They matter more than you think. But this raises an important question. If your brain naturally builds habits through repetition, why do so many good habits disappear after only a few days? Why is it so easy to stick with behaviors that hurt us, yet so difficult to maintain the ones that could completely transform our lives? The answer has very little to do with discipline. It has everything to do with something most people spend their lives chasing: motivation. In the next chapter, you'll discover why motivation is one of the most misunderstood forces in personal growth, and why relying on it is one of the fastest ways to break a habit. Chapter 2. Why motivation always fails. Let's start with a question. How many times have you said, "I'll start on Monday"? Maybe it was a new workout routine, a healthier diet, reading 10 pages a day, saving money, learning a new skill. For a while, everything felt different. You were excited. You made a plan. You pictured the person you were about to become. Then life happened. The alarm rang earlier than expected. Work became stressful. You skipped one workout. You ordered takeout instead of cooking. You missed one day of reading. And before long, the excitement that once felt so powerful had quietly disappeared. If you've ever experienced that cycle, you've probably reached the same conclusion many people do. I just need more motivation. It sounds logical. After all, motivation feels amazing. When you're motivated, waking up early doesn't seem difficult. Going to the gym feels exciting. Eating healthy feels like a fresh start. You believe this time will be different. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Motivation is one of the least reliable forces in your life. That's not because motivation is bad. It's because motivation is emotional. And emotions are constantly changing. Think about the weather. Some mornings are bright and sunny. Others are cloudy, windy, or filled with rain. You wouldn't build your house based on today's weather because you know tomorrow could look completely different. Motivation works the same way. Some days you'll wake up energized and ready to conquer the world. Other days, simply getting out of bed will feel like an achievement. If your habits depend on how you feel each morning, they'll rise and fall with your emotions. That's exhausting. And it's exactly why so many people keep starting over. Here's something interesting. Think about brushing your teeth. Do you wake up every morning feeling deeply motivated to brush them? Probably not. You do it because it's part of who you are. It's built into your routine. You don't negotiate with yourself. You don't hold a debate in your mind about whether today is the right day. You simply do it. Now compare that to exercising. Many people spend 15 minutes arguing with themselves before they even put on their shoes. I'll go later. I'm too tired. I deserve a break. I'll make up for it tomorrow. The workout hasn't even started, but the mental battle has already drained their energy. The difference isn't effort. The difference is automation. One behavior is a habit. The other still depends on motivation. There's another reason motivation lets us down. Every decision you make throughout the day uses a little bit of mental energy. What should I wear? What should I eat? Should I answer this email now or later? Should I clean the house today? Should I check my phone? Researchers often refer to this as decision fatigue. The more choices you make, the harder it becomes to make good ones later in the day. That's why eating healthy at 8 in the morning often feels easy. By 8 at night, after a long day of work, traffic, family responsibilities, and dozens of decisions, that bag of chips suddenly becomes much harder to resist. Your brain isn't weaker. It's simply tired. Successful people understand this. Contrary to popular belief, they aren't constantly overflowing with motivation. In fact, many of them feel just as tired, distracted, or uninspired as everyone else. The difference is that they've stopped depending on motivation. Instead, they've built systems. A writer doesn't wake up wondering whether inspiration will arrive. They sit down at the same time each day and begin writing. An athlete doesn't ask if they feel like training. Training is already scheduled. A musician doesn't wait until they're in the perfect mood to practice. The decision has already been made. That's the secret. The fewer decisions you leave for your future self, the more consistent your habits become. Imagine two people who both want to exercise. The first wakes up each morning asking, Should I work out today? The second lays out their clothes the night before, schedules the workout for 6:30 a.m., and treats it like any other appointment. Who do you think is more likely to stay consistent? Not because they're stronger. Not because they're more disciplined. Because they've removed the daily debate. Every habit begins with a decision. But lasting habits remove the need to make that decision over and over again. This brings us to another idea that changes everything. Most people focus on goals. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to write a book. I want to run a marathon. Goals are exciting because they give us something to chase. But here's the problem. Goals only matter for a moment. Once you reach them, the excitement fades. If your only reason for exercising is to lose weight, what happens after you reach your target? If your only reason for saving money is to buy a car, what happens once it's parked in your driveway? Goals can get you started. Systems keep you going. Think of a farmer. A farmer can't control the weather. They can't force seeds to grow overnight. What they can do is prepare the soil, plant consistently, water regularly, and trust the process. The harvest comes because of the system, not because of wishful thinking. Your habits work exactly the same way. Every small action is like planting another seed. Some days you won't notice any change. You'll wonder if it's worth the effort. Keep planting anyway, because growth is happening beneath the surface long before you can see it. This is why people who build lasting success become more attached to the process than the outcome. They learn to enjoy showing up. They celebrate consistency more than perfection. They understand that who they become matters far more than what they achieve. That's a powerful shift. Instead of saying, I hope I stay motivated this week, they ask, what system can make this easier? Instead of relying on feelings, they rely on routines. Instead of chasing short bursts of inspiration, they create an environment where success becomes the natural choice. And here's something remarkable. Once you stop waiting to feel motivated, you often discover that action creates motivation, not the other way around. Take one small step, and your mind begins to catch up. Finish one page, and reading the second feels easier. Walk for 5 minutes, and suddenly 10 doesn't seem impossible. Momentum has a way of creating the motivation you were waiting for all along. But there's still one problem. Even when people understand that systems matter more than motivation, they often make one mistake that causes them to quit within days. They start too big. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Because sometimes the smallest habit is the one that changes your entire life. Chapter 3. The tiny habit that changes everything. Imagine standing at the bottom of a mountain. You look up and see the peak hidden behind the clouds. The climb looks impossible. Your legs already feel tired, and you haven't even taken the first step. Now imagine someone walks over and says, don't worry about climbing the mountain today. Just take one step. That feels different, doesn't it? One step doesn't seem intimidating. One step doesn't require courage. One step feels possible. That's exactly how lasting habits begin. Not with giant leaps. With tiny, almost laughably small actions. Most people don't fail because they're incapable of change. They fail because they make the starting line too far away. Think about New Year's resolutions. Someone decides they're going to get healthy, so they commit to exercising 6 days a week for an hour, cutting out sugar completely, drinking a gallon of water every day, and preparing every meal from scratch. For the first few days, excitement carries them forward. Then reality shows up. Work gets busy. The kids need attention. A meeting runs late. They're tired. They miss one workout. Then another. Soon, they convince themselves they've failed. But here's the truth. The problem wasn't their goal. The problem was the size of the first step. Your brain loves progress, but it also hates overwhelm. When a task feels too big, your brain begins looking for reasons to avoid it. I don't have enough time. I'm too tired. "I'll start tomorrow." Those excuses aren't always laziness. Sometimes they're your brain's way of protecting you from something that feels too difficult. So how do you outsmart that instinct? You make the habit so small that saying no feels almost ridiculous. Instead of promising to read 50 pages every night, read 1 page. Instead of committing to a 1-hour workout, do 1 push-up. Instead of writing 1,000 words, write 1 sentence. At first, these goals sound almost too easy. That's exactly the point. The goal isn't to impress yourself. The goal is to show up. Because showing up changes something inside you. Let's say your goal is to become a runner. On day 1, you tell yourself you'll only put on your running shoes. That's it. You don't have to run. You don't even have to leave the house. Tomorrow, you do the same thing. A few days later, putting on your shoes feels automatic. Then you decide to walk to the end of the street. A week later, you jog for 2 minutes. A month later, you're running without spending 20 minutes arguing with yourself first. Notice what happened. The habit grew naturally because you removed the fear of starting. Starting is almost always the hardest part. Once you're moving, continuing becomes much easier. Think about reading a great novel. Sometimes the hardest part is opening the book. Once you're a few pages in, you don't want to stop. The same thing happens with cleaning your room, studying for an exam, writing a report, or exercising. Action creates momentum. Momentum creates consistency. Consistency creates transformation. There's fascinating science behind this. Every time you complete even a tiny habit, your brain experiences a small sense of accomplishment. That feeling triggers the release of dopamine, a chemical involved in motivation, learning, and reward. Many people think dopamine only appears after huge achievements. That's not true. Your brain also rewards small wins. Every tiny success sends a quiet message. This behavior is worth remembering. Repeat it enough times, and your brain begins strengthening the pathway that supports that habit. In other words, every small victory teaches your brain to want the next one. That's why celebrating progress matters. Not because you're pretending a tiny step is a huge accomplishment, but because you're reinforcing the identity of someone who follows through. Imagine 2 people who both want to write a book. The first waits until they have an entire free afternoon. The second writes just 1 paragraph every morning before checking their phone. Who finishes first? Most people assume it's the person with the biggest bursts of effort. Usually, it's the person with the smallest daily habit. Because consistency always beats intensity. A burst of effort can change your day. A repeated habit can change your life. History is filled with examples of extraordinary results that started with tiny beginnings. A massive oak tree begins as a single acorn. A skyscraper begins with 1 brick. A marathon begins with 1 step. Every masterpiece was once a blank page. Every expert was once a beginner. The challenge is that we compare our first step to someone else's 1,000th. We see a successful entrepreneur and forget the years of quiet work no one noticed. We admire a fit athlete without thinking about the countless ordinary workouts that came before the medals. We celebrate finished books while overlooking the thousands of days the author simply sat down and wrote a little more. Real transformation rarely looks dramatic in the moment. It looks ordinary. It looks repetitive. It looks almost boring. And that's exactly why so many people underestimate it. There's another benefit to starting small. Tiny habits remove the fear of failure. If your goal is to meditate for 30 minutes every morning, missing a day feels like a major setback. But if your goal is to sit quietly for 1 minute, it's much easier to stay consistent. You're building trust with yourself. Every time you keep a promise, no matter how small, you strengthen your confidence. You begin believing, I'm someone who does what I say I'll do. That belief is priceless. Because confidence doesn't come from thinking differently. It comes from acting consistently. So here's a challenge. Choose 1 habit you've been struggling to build. Now make it smaller. Much smaller. If it still feels challenging, shrink it again. Your habit should feel so easy that skipping it seems harder than doing it. Remember, you're not trying to change your entire life today. You're trying to become the kind of person who never stops showing up. Small actions repeated every day have a remarkable way of becoming something much bigger. But there's one more secret. Even tiny habits struggle to survive if your environment constantly works against you. You can have the best intentions in the world. Yet if your surroundings make bad choices easy and good choices difficult, you'll always feel like you're swimming upstream. The good news? Changing your environment is often easier than changing your willpower. And once you learn how, your habits begin working for you instead of against you. Chapter 4. Make your environment do the work. Imagine you walk into your kitchen after a long, exhausting day. On the counter sits a bowl of fresh apples, bananas, and oranges. Next to it is a large plate of warm chocolate chip cookies. You tell yourself you're only going to grab a piece of fruit. Then the smell of the cookies reaches you. 5 minutes later, you're wondering how you ended up eating 3 of them. Sound familiar? Most people blame themselves in moments like this. I have no self-control. I just need more discipline. But what if the cookies won before you even walked into the room? That might sound strange, but your environment has far more influence over your behavior than you probably realize. We like to believe every decision we make is carefully thought out. The truth is, many of our choices happen almost automatically, triggered by the things we see, hear, and experience around us. Your surroundings are always sending you tiny messages. Some encourage good habits. Others quietly pull you toward bad ones. The challenge is that these messages become so familiar, you stop noticing them. Think about your phone. Where is it right now? On your desk? Beside your bed? In your pocket? How many times have you picked it up without any real reason? Maybe you were waiting for your coffee, standing in line, watching television, or simply feeling bored for a few seconds. You probably didn't make a conscious decision. Your brain saw the phone, and a habit took over. The cue led to the action. That's how powerful your environment can be. Now imagine something different. Picture a book resting on your pillow. Every night, before you go to sleep, you have to pick it up. Suddenly, reading one chapter doesn't require remembering. The reminder is already there. Your environment has done part of the work for you. This is one of the simplest ways to build better habits. Don't rely on memory. Design reminders into your surroundings. Want to drink more water? Keep a bottle where you can always see it. Want to practice guitar? Leave it on a stand in the living room instead of hidden in its case. Want to write every morning? Leave your notebook open on your desk before you go to bed. These small changes seem almost too simple. But simple doesn't mean ineffective. In fact, simplicity is often what makes them work. There's another idea that can completely change the way you think about habits. It's called friction. Imagine 2 doors. One opens with a gentle push. The other is heavy, squeaky, and difficult to move. Which one are you more likely to use? Almost everyone chooses the easier door. Your brain does exactly the same thing every day. It naturally moves toward the path that requires the least effort. That's why making good habits easier, and bad habits harder, can completely change your behavior. Suppose you want to exercise in the morning. Instead of searching for your clothes after waking up, lay everything out the night before. Your shoes, your socks, your water bottle, your headphones. When the alarm rings, you've removed several tiny obstacles. Each obstacle might seem insignificant on its own. Together, they often become the reason people quit. Now think about bad habits. If social media constantly steals your attention, don't depend on willpower alone. Move the apps off your home screen. Turn off unnecessary notifications. Log out after each use. Better yet, leave your phone in another room while you work. None of these changes require extraordinary discipline. They simply add a little friction. And sometimes, a few extra seconds are enough to interrupt an automatic habit. The same principle works in almost every area of life. If you're trying to eat healthier, place healthy foods where you can easily see them. Put vegetables at eye level in the refrigerator. Keep fruit on the kitchen counter. Store unhealthy snacks in places that aren't immediately visible, or better yet, don't bring them home in the first place. After all, it's much harder to eat cookies that aren't sitting in your cupboard. If you want to read more, keep books within reach. If you want to meditate, leave your cushion where you'll notice it. If you want to save money, automate your savings so the decision happens before you have a chance to spend. Notice the pattern. You're not forcing yourself to become more disciplined. You're making the right choice the easiest choice. This is something successful people understand remarkably well. From the outside, it can look like they possess incredible willpower. But when you look closer, you often discover they've simply designed their lives to reduce temptation and support consistency. A professional athlete doesn't keep junk food scattered around the training facility. A serious writer often has a dedicated place to write. A musician keeps their instrument close by. Their environments constantly encourage the behaviors they want to repeat. They've learned a simple truth. Your surroundings either support your goals or compete with them. There isn't much middle ground. Take a moment to picture your own home. Walk through it in your mind. What habits does it encourage? Does your bedroom invite restful sleep or endless scrolling? Does your workspace help you focus or distract you every few minutes? Does your kitchen make healthy eating simple or difficult? Your answers matter, because every room is quietly shaping your daily choices. The exciting part is that you don't need to renovate your entire house. Small adjustments can create surprisingly big results. One book on the table. One water bottle on the desk. One pair of running shoes by the door. One charging station outside the bedroom. Tiny changes. Powerful consequences. Remember, habits rarely happen by accident. They're usually triggered by something. A place, a time, a sound, a smell, a feeling. The more you become aware of those triggers, the more control you gain over your behavior. You're no longer drifting through your day on autopilot. You're intentionally creating an environment that nudges you toward the person you want to become. But even the best-designed environment can't solve one important problem. Sometimes the trigger isn't something you see. It's something you feel. Stress, loneliness, boredom, anxiety, frustration. These invisible cues are often the real reason bad habits become so difficult to break. You don't always eat because you're hungry. You don't always scroll because you're curious. You don't always procrastinate because the task is impossible. Often, you're responding to an emotion. And until you understand that hidden loop, you'll keep treating the symptom instead of the cause. That's exactly what we'll uncover in the next chapter. Because once you understand the invisible cycle driving your habits, you'll finally know how to break it, and replace it with one that works in your favor. The next chapter explores the hidden habit loop that quietly controls much of your daily behavior, revealing why lasting change isn't about eliminating bad habits, it's about replacing them intelligently. Chapter 5. Breaking the hidden loops that keep you stuck. Have you ever found yourself opening the refrigerator, staring inside for a full minute, and then closing the door without taking anything? A few minutes later, you open it again. Not because you're hungry, because something else is going on. Maybe you're bored. Maybe you're stressed. Maybe you're avoiding a difficult conversation, an unfinished project, or simply the silence. The refrigerator wasn't the destination. It was an escape. We've all done something similar. You pick up your phone without thinking. You promise yourself you'll watch just one video. You refresh your email every few minutes, even though nothing important is waiting. You tell yourself you're taking a short break, but somehow an hour disappears. When that happens, it's easy to think, I have no self-control. But what if that's the wrong question? What if the better question is, what triggered this behavior? Because every habit, good or bad, follows a pattern. Once you understand that pattern, you'll never look at your behavior the same way again. Psychologists often describe habits as a simple loop made up of 4 parts: a cue, a craving, a response, a reward. Let's slow that down. The cue is what starts the habit. It could be seeing your phone light up, walking into the kitchen, hearing a notification, feeling lonely, feeling stressed after work, or even noticing the clock strike 3 in the afternoon. The cue is simply a signal. It tells your brain that a familiar routine is available. Then comes the craving. This is where many people get confused. You don't crave the habit itself. You crave what you believe the habit will give you. You don't crave social media. You crave distraction. You don't crave junk food. You crave comfort. You don't crave procrastination. You crave temporary relief from something uncomfortable. That's an important distinction, because it means the behavior isn't the real problem. It's the solution your brain has learned to use. Next comes the response. This is the action you take. You open the app. You grab the snack. You delay the assignment. You light the cigarette. You buy something online. Finally comes the reward. Maybe it's a moment of pleasure, a sense of relief, a burst of entertainment, a feeling of control. Your brain notices the reward and quietly says, "That worked. Let's remember this for next time." And just like that, the loop becomes a little stronger. Repeat it enough times, and it becomes automatic. That's why bad habits can feel so powerful. You're not just fighting a behavior. You're fighting a loop your brain has practiced hundreds, sometimes thousands, of times. But here's the encouraging part. If habits are learned, they can also be relearned. Many people try to break bad habits by using force. They tell themselves, "I'll never eat sweets again. I'll never procrastinate again. I'll never waste time on my phone again." For a while, they succeed. Then stress arrives, or exhaustion, or disappointment, and suddenly the old habit returns. Why? Because they removed the behavior, but they never replaced the need. Imagine your kitchen sink has a leak. Instead of fixing the pipe, you keep wiping the water off the floor. You'll be busy forever. The puddle isn't the problem. The leak is. Bad habits work the same way. If you only focus on stopping the action, you'll miss what's feeding it. Let's look at a common example. Meet David. Every afternoon around 3 o'clock, David walks to the office vending machine and buys a chocolate bar. He believes he has a sugar addiction, so he decides to quit. The next day, he avoids the vending machine. By 4 o'clock, he's frustrated, distracted, and thinking about chocolate constantly. Eventually, he gives in. He feels guilty. He promises to do better tomorrow. The cycle repeats. But one day, David asks a different question. Why do I always want chocolate at 3 o'clock? After paying attention for a week, he notices something surprising. He's not craving sugar. He's craving a break. 3 o'clock is when his energy drops. It's when he's mentally exhausted from meetings. The chocolate bar isn't solving hunger. It's giving him 10 minutes away from his desk. Once he understands the real craving, everything changes. Instead of walking to the vending machine, he steps outside for a short walk. Sometimes he stretches. Sometimes he drinks water and chats with a coworker. The craving is still there, but the response is different. The reward, a mental reset, stays the same. That's the secret. Don't just remove the habit. Replace the routine. Here's another example. Imagine every time you're anxious, you scroll through social media. You're not addicted to your phone. You're searching for relief. If you replace 5 minutes of scrolling with 5 minutes of deep breathing, a short walk, or writing your thoughts in a journal, you're still meeting the emotional need. You're simply choosing a healthier response. Will it feel natural immediately? No. Remember the path through the grassy field from chapter 1? The old path is still there. It's wide. It's familiar. The new path is barely visible. Every time you choose the healthier response, you're taking another step along that new trail. At first, it feels awkward. Eventually, it begins to feel normal. One of the biggest mistakes people make is expecting old habits to disappear overnight. Your brain doesn't work that way. Those pathways were built over months or years. Replacing them takes patience. That's why you shouldn't panic when an old urge shows up. An urge doesn't mean you failed. It simply means your brain remembers the old route. You get to choose whether you walk it. Think about that for a moment. You are not your cravings. You are not your impulses. You are the person who decides what happens next. That decision might only last a few seconds, but those few seconds can change everything. Each time you interrupt an old loop, you're teaching your brain something new. We don't solve stress this way anymore. We don't escape boredom like that anymore. We've found a better path. Those messages become stronger with repetition. Eventually, the healthier response becomes your new default. Not because you're forcing yourself. Because you've trained your brain to expect a different reward. That's real freedom. Not the absence of temptation. The presence of a better choice. But even after you've built healthier routines, one challenge remains. What happens when life gets difficult? When motivation disappears? When stress returns? When no one is watching? What keeps you consistent then? The answer isn't another trick. It isn't another productivity hack. It's something much deeper. Because lasting habits aren't built on what you want to do. They're built on who you believe you are. And that Chapter 6. The Secret of Unbreakable Habits. Imagine someone hands you a cigarette. You smile and say, "No thanks." Now imagine two different people saying those exact same words. The first person says, "No thanks. I'm trying to quit." The second says, "No thanks. I don't smoke." The words sound similar, but the thinking behind them is completely different. The first person is still fighting with their old identity. Deep down, they still see themselves as a smoker who's trying to change. Every refusal feels like a battle. The second person isn't resisting temptation. They're simply acting like the person they already believe they are. That small difference changes everything. Most people try to change their lives from the outside in. They focus on outcomes. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to save more money. I want to write a book. Those are good goals. Then they focus on behaviors. I'll exercise every morning. I'll stop buying things I don't need. I'll write for an hour every day. Those are good habits. But there's one level even deeper than goals and behaviors. Identity. Identity is the story you tell yourself about who you are. And whether you realize it or not, that story shapes nearly every decision you make. Think about someone who believes, "I'm terrible with money." Even if they receive a raise, they'll often find a way to spend it. Not because they can't save. Because saving doesn't match the story they believe. Or consider someone who constantly says, "I've never been a reader." Give them a great book, and they may read a few chapters. But the moment life gets busy, they'll stop. Why? Because readers read. If they don't see themselves as a reader, the habit never feels natural. Here's a simple truth. People naturally act in ways that match their identity. If you believe you're an organized person, you'll tidy up without much thought. If you believe you're a kind person, helping others feels normal. If you believe you're someone who exercises, missing workouts begins to feel unusual. Your habits become expressions of who you believe you are. That's why changing behavior without changing identity rarely lasts. It's like putting on clothes that don't fit. Eventually, you want to take them off. But when your habits match your identity, consistency becomes much easier. So how do you change your identity? Not by repeating positive affirmations in front of a mirror. Not by pretending to be someone you're not. Identity isn't built by what you say. It's built by what you repeatedly do. Imagine someone who wants to become a writer. They don't need to publish a bestseller this month. They simply need to write today. Every time they sit down and write, they're casting a vote. They're saying, "I am a writer." Not because the world gave them that title. Because their actions did. The same is true for every habit. Each workout is a vote for becoming a healthy person. Each page you read is a vote for becoming a lifelong learner. Each dollar you save is a vote for becoming financially responsible. Each promise you keep is a vote for becoming someone you can trust. Notice something important. One vote doesn't decide the election. Missing one workout doesn't make you unhealthy. Eating one unhealthy meal doesn't erase months of progress. Skipping one day of writing doesn't mean you're not a writer. What matters is the direction of your votes. Over time, those votes create evidence. And evidence changes belief. Let's imagine two friends. Both decide to wake up earlier. The first says, "I hope I can become someone who wakes up early." The second says, "I am becoming someone who values my mornings." Every day they wake up on time, they gather another piece of evidence. Eventually, they no longer need to convince themselves. Their actions have already proven it. The identity becomes real. This is why perfection is such a dangerous goal. Many people miss one day and immediately think, "I failed. I knew I couldn't do this. I always quit." Those thoughts strengthen the very identity they're trying to escape. Instead, imagine saying, "I missed today. But that's not who I am. Tomorrow I'll cast another vote." Can you feel the difference? One response creates shame. The other creates resilience. Perfection isn't required. Consistency is. One missed day is an event. Giving up is a pattern. Never confuse the two. Some of the strongest people you'll ever meet aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who refuse to let one bad day become a bad week. Or one bad week become a bad year. They return. Again and again. Because they know every return is another vote for the person they're becoming. Take a moment and ask yourself a different question. Not, "What habit do I want to build?" Ask, "Who do I want to become?" Do you want to become someone who keeps their promises? Someone who protects their health? Someone who finishes what they start? Someone who keeps learning long after school ends? Someone whose children, friends, or coworkers can depend on? Now ask yourself one more question. What would that person do today? Not next month. Not next year. Today. Maybe they'd read one page. Take a 10-minute walk. Drink one extra glass of water. Write one paragraph. Turn off their phone an hour before bed. Small actions. Big identity. This is where everything we've learned comes together. Your brain builds habits through repetition. Motivation comes and goes. Tiny actions create momentum. Your environment quietly shapes your choices. Every habit follows a loop that can be redesigned. And now you've discovered the final piece. Each action isn't just something you do. It's a vote for the person you're becoming. That realization changes everything. Because once your habits become part of your identity, they stop feeling like chores. They become part of your character. And character has a remarkable way of staying consistent, even when motivation disappears. So don't ask whether you feel like doing the habit today. Ask whether the person you're becoming would do it. Most of the time, you'll already know the answer. And when you act on it, one small choice at a time, you'll discover something extraordinary. You were never building habits. You were building yourself. And that's the kind of transformation that lasts a lifetime. Final chapter. Your future is built one repeat at a time. Let's travel forward in time. Imagine it's exactly 1 year from today. Picture yourself waking up on that morning. You stretch, get out of bed, and begin your day. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself a simple question. What does your life look like? Not the life you hope for. The life your daily habits have created. Maybe you wake up feeling healthier because you kept taking those morning walks. Maybe your bookshelf is filled with books you've actually finished. Maybe your savings account has grown, not because you won the lottery, but because you made one small decision over and over again. Maybe you've written the first draft of the book you've always dreamed about. Maybe you're calmer, stronger, more focused, or more confident than you are today. None of those changes happened overnight. They happened quietly. One day at a time. One choice at a time. One repeat at a time. Now imagine something different. Imagine you keep doing exactly what you've been doing. The same routines. The same excuses. The same delays. The same promise of, I'll start tomorrow. How different will your life look a year from now? Probably not very. That thought isn't meant to discourage you. It's meant to remind you of something incredibly powerful. Time passes whether you change or not. Every sunrise brings another opportunity to cast a vote for the person you're becoming. The question is, what are you voting for? Throughout this audiobook, we've uncovered a truth that many people spend years trying to understand. Success isn't built on one heroic effort. It's built on ordinary moments that most people overlook. You learned that your brain is constantly creating habits through repetition. It isn't trying to make your life difficult. It's trying to make your life efficient. You discovered why motivation fades and why waiting to feel like it is one of the biggest traps we can fall into. You learned that tiny habits often beat ambitious plans because they remove the fear of starting. You saw how your environment quietly shapes your behavior, sometimes helping you and sometimes holding you back. You uncovered the hidden habit loop and realized that behind every behavior is a need, a craving, or an emotion asking to be understood. And finally, you discovered perhaps the most important lesson of all. Every action is a vote. Not just for a result. For an identity. Every page you read says, I'm a learner. Every workout says, I value my health. Every promise you keep says, I'm someone I can trust. Those votes may seem small. But small doesn't mean insignificant. Think about a single drop of water. One drop doesn't seem capable of changing anything. But place that drop in the same spot, day after day, year after year, and eventually it can carve through solid stone. Not because the water is powerful in a single moment. Because it is faithful over time. Your habits work the same way. Or think about planting a tree. On the day you place the seed in the ground, nothing impressive happens. The soil looks exactly the same. A week later, still nothing. Even after a month, you may wonder if anything is happening at all. But beneath the surface, roots are growing. Quietly. Patiently. Preparing for the day the tree finally breaks through the ground. Real change often looks like that. Invisible before it becomes obvious. That's why so many people quit too soon. They expect instant results. When they don't see them, they assume nothing is happening. But the truth is, the most important growth is often the growth you can't yet see. Every healthy meal. Every early morning. Every chapter read. Every workout completed. Every distraction resisted. Every kind word spoken. Every promise honored. Each one is strengthening roots. One day, you'll look back and realize the person you wanted to become didn't arrive all at once. They appeared gradually, almost without you noticing. There's one final idea I'd like to leave with you. Don't measure your life only by the big milestones. Celebrate the quiet victories. The day you chose water instead of soda. The evening you read instead of scrolling. The morning you got out of bed when no one was watching. Those moments may never appear on social media. No one may applaud them. But they matter. In fact, they matter the most. Because character is built in private long before it's recognized in public. The strongest habits are the ones you continue even when there's no audience. Even when progress feels slow. Even when motivation has disappeared. Because by then, you're no longer relying on excitement. You're relying on the person you've become. As you finish this audiobook, resist the urge to change everything tomorrow. You don't need a brand new life by sunrise. You need one meaningful step. Choose one habit. Just one. Make it small enough that you can't talk yourself out of it. Repeat it tomorrow. Then the next day. Protect it. Nurture it. Let it become part of your identity. Trust the process, even when the results are invisible. Because they won't stay invisible forever. One day, you'll wake up and realize the habit that once felt impossible now feels as natural as brushing your teeth. And when that happens, don't stop. Build another. Then another. Not because you're chasing perfection. Because you're becoming the kind of person who keeps growing. Remember this whenever you're tempted to quit. You don't become extraordinary because of one extraordinary day. You become extraordinary because of thousands of ordinary days that most people never notice. Your future isn't decided by one dramatic choice. It's shaped by the small decisions you repeat when nobody is watching. The life you've always imagined isn't waiting for some future version of you. It's being built by the choices you make today. One habit. One decision. One repeat at a time. So, as you close this audiobook, don't ask yourself, can I really change? Ask a better question. What's the smallest action I can repeat today that my future self will thank me for? Then do it. Tomorrow, do it again. Keep going. Not because it's easy. Not because you're always motivated. But because you've learned something many people never do. Small actions, repeated with intention, become remarkable lives. Your next chapter doesn't begin next Monday. It doesn't begin next month. It begins with the very next choice you make. Choose wisely. Your future is already listening. If this audiobook inspired you or gave you even one idea that could change your life, I'd really appreciate your support. Please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who could use a little encouragement today. You never know. One small share could be the reason someone starts changing their life. And if you're passionate about personal growth, building better habits, and becoming the best version of yourself, be sure to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next audiobook. Thank you for spending this time with me. Keep believing in yourself, keep showing up, and remember, your future isn't built by one big decision. It's built by the small choices you repeat every single day. Until next time, take care and keep growing.